All right, so let us begin. Good afternoon to everyone. I hope you are doing well, that your day is going well for you, that your classes went well so far, if you had more classes this morning. So we are looking at ancient Egypt. I posted this on Saturday, and also I shared with you the characteristics of a civilization, so you can use that as a guide to make your notes. So this is a little timeline of ancient Egypt in terms of before the Common Era or after the Common Era. We see that ancient Egypt began with the Old Kingdom to the New Kingdom. Then you have the Nubian dynasty, and then you have Kush. And these are two sides of two different groups, but these are Black Egyptians who will take control of the entire Egypt at certain points in time. Now, one of the things we mentioned, one of the characteristics, the themes of ancient Egypt, we talk about location. So in terms of location, we can say that ancient Egypt is located in North Africa, south of the Mediterranean Sea, and was west of Mesopotamia. In terms of physical characteristics, there is the Nile River, deserts, mountains, cataracts, and plain, delta plain. In terms of the human environment, Egyptians used the Nile River for trade, for farming, to drink water, to wash clothes, and to make bricks. And they build ships and boats. They use camels and horses to travel across the desert. They engage in mathematics, mining, and practice polytheism. And the region is Africa. So in terms of the geography, in terms of location, we see ancient Egypt, like Mesopotamia, ancient Mesopotamia is also what we call a river civilization. The only difference between Egypt and Mesopotamia is that Egypt only has one river, which is the Nile, whereas Mesopotamia had two rivers. But can anyone tell me what the two rivers in Mesopotamia?
Tigris and Euphrates.
Right, Tigris and Euphrates, whereas this is the Nile, but take note of this. There are two branches of the Nile, the White Nile and the Blue Nile. They are not two rivers, it's one river with two different tributaries. This is Kush. This is Nubia. Today, this area is called the Sudan. So at one time, Nubians and people from Kush will rule the entire part of Egypt. This is Upper Egypt, and this is Lower Egypt. So you see the river Nile. Could anyone tell me where is this? Where's the source of the Nile? The source of the Nile River.
Did you say it was like Victoria?
Right, Lake Victoria. Right, that's in Central Africa. It was named after Queen Victoria because Great Britain ended up conquering Africa and they named that lake, but that lake had an African name. So that's something you could research. What was the name of the lake before it was named? Lake Victoria. So the Nile River is the world's longest river. Right? It's the world's longest river. It stretches across from Central Africa through a vast desert land. And it is 750 miles long. Right? So think about that. Think about a river in the United States running for 750 miles. So ancient Egypt was divided into two kingdoms. You have Upper Egypt, this is Upper Egypt, and Lower Egypt. And you see that the Nile, this region here is a delta. If you live in Mississippi, Louisiana, and some states, there are deltas. When the water reaches here, before it gets to the sea, there are so many little tributaries. So it made it difficult for the people in this part of the world to penetrate Egypt because of the deltas, because you can get into a tributary and think you are coming down the Nile, but it takes you all over. So you have to know the region to get around that, to get inside. So that tells us that ancient African people who lived in Egypt, whether they lived in Kush or in Nubia, they had access to the Nile and they were trading in the Mediterranean Sea. And we know when you get to the Mediterranean, you are in what we call Europe, Greece and Rome and those places. So part of your location and geography is to know that there's the Nile River, 750 miles long. And this is what I was telling you about, the delta region. This is the Mediterranean Sea here, but this is the delta. See how many little tributaries? You might think you might enter one here, but it might take you a while to get inside. And then, of course, there were cataracts, rapids so you might be traveling on the Mediterranean, on the Nile, and all of a sudden you meet a sudden drop. There's a drop. So you have to know that region. So the Nile. So there's desert, arid desert also, and then there's the desert land, which we call redlands. So because of the River Nile, ancient Egyptians, like ancient Mesopotamians, practiced agriculture. So it was what we call an agrarian society. So like the people in Mesopotamia, they practiced irrigation. And they used shadoof to spread the water to the fields, and they planted wheat, lettuce, asparagus, radishes, cucumbers, dates, melons, and grapes, some of the fruits that you like, and vegetables. And they use wheat to make bread. If you see anybody ever had an Egyptian bread, it looks like something like a pita bread. It's flat, and people use it as a dip. Again, we are still in geography. Because of these are some of the things, geography will shape your life depending on where you live. So these are some of mining. They mine copper, iron, gold, and other precious stones. They engage in fishing and hunting. Of course, on the banks of the River Nile, they would fish and hunt, but they did not hunt these two animals, the hippopotamus and crocodiles. In fact, in ancient Egypt, crocodiles were seen as gods, were worshipped. Right? So notice that, I mean, crocodiles are dangerous animals. Hippos are dangerous animals. And they use the River Nile as a form of a means of transportation and trade. So the Nile became a highway. So internally, they will be trading on the River Nile among themselves, between different cities. And then externally, they will use the Nile to get to parts of Central Africa and East, right? And also to the Red Sea. And they'll also use the desert, well, to trade, and they'll exchange goods. They'll barter. We don't have these items, we will trade with Mesopotamia, with Persia, with the Greeks for whatever we need. In every society, as we mentioned, there's something called social class or social hierarchy. And this was the social hierarchy that pertained in ancient Egypt. The pharaoh and his family at the top. Then we had priests and nobles, governors, and other people who ran the bureaucracy. Next, we had traders, artisans, shopkeepers, and scribes. Then farmers and unskilled. And then below this group, you'll have slaves. You could add another layer here and include slaves. So we talked about the Old Kingdom, right? The Old Kingdom. And the first pharaoh of the Old Kingdom was called Khufu. And they created one of the largest pyramids after he died. Another feature of Egyptian society, of any civilization, is writing. What was the writing in Mesopotamia called? Anyone? What was it called?
Uniform.
Uniform, good. So here now we are seeing a different type of writing called hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics. And what are they using to write on it? They're using the papyrus. This is grown on the riverbanks, and they are cutting it and drying it. It will become stiff, and they'll be writing on papyrus. And also they will be using the Rosetta Stone. So you see that papyrus comes from the reeds that are grown on the banks of the River Nile. They don't decay, and many of the ancient Egyptian texts survive up to today. So what did they use their writing for? To document government records, historical records, science texts, and medical manuals and literary works. So they also had literature called the Book of the Dead. What was the literature in ancient Mesopotamia called? Anyone?
Gilgamesh.
Right, the epic, not Gilgamesh, but the Epic of Gilgamesh. So if we want to know, let's see if this is true, the Book of the Dead. All right, so to know that it's true, let's go to the internet. Again, this is the website I wanted to use, www.ancient.edu, and here it is, the Book of the Dead. So that if this is one of the terms that might come in your paper or for exam, you can go and do your research and you'll see what they talk about here. Okay, so this is the website, as I said. I wanted to use this website in addition to your book and the notes to use this website here to conduct more research on the civilizations or any aspect of the civilization that we studied. We also talked about, again, the Nile River, right? We talk about the Nile, the River Nile. All right, and we can go to National Geographic. That's another good site. And this is the River Nile, you see? People are bathing in the Nile. These are old Egyptian temples with some modern ones. The Nile River, you see, flows from south to north through eastern Africa. It begins at, the river flows from Lake Victoria. You see that? It has two sides, the white and the blue. Well, they say, what do you mean? There are three tributaries, white, blue, and the Agbara. And you know, you get information in Nile and look at some pictures of the Nile there, flowing through Egypt. So we know, if you want to know things that are again, you can use National Geographic or ancient.eu. So we talk about cuneiform. And this was part of the Egyptian hieroglyphics. Used their sound and their meaning. So it's pictorial, sound, meaning. Like every society, Egyptians engage in science and mathematics. Just like in Mesopotamia, we saw science and mathematics. Here we will see the Egyptians using science. They use astronomy. They use the stars to tell when flooding of the Nile will happen. They engage in medicine. So medicine is not Greek and Roman only. The ancient Egyptians knew about medicine. They had doctors, they had morticians, they performed some of the food surgeries, and their medicine was made from herbs. They knew about herbal remedies. They used herbs to cure and heal people. And this is what the doctors believe. Doctors believe that the heart controls thought and brain control the blood flow. And again, they practice geometry. To build this pyramid here, you have to know triangles, right? And squares. And so they were very good mathematicians, astronomers, and medical doctors. Like every civilization, again, they have their religion. The ancient Egyptians practiced polytheism just like the people in ancient Mesopotamia. They believe in many gods, that's polytheism. And they built temples and cities in various regions named after gods. They believe in the afterlife. This is why they wrote the Book of the Dead. And they had their gods and goddesses. And they prepared the pharaohs and other people for burial because they believe if you die, you might come back in the next life as a crocodile or a beetle or some other thing. So they practiced mummification and they had all these rituals in terms of the dead. Now we said that Egypt, there are two kingdoms, or two parts of Egypt, Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. So King the Pharaoh Menes, he invaded Lower Egypt. That's the part with the Nubians and the Kush people. And he united the whole country. And he married a princess probably from Upper Egypt. Upper Egypt, the king of Upper Egypt invaded Lower Egypt. He married a woman there and he united the empire. And he was the first pharaoh, which literally means ruler of a great house. He also started the first Egyptian dynasty or series of rulers from the same family. So to become a pharaoh in ancient Egypt, you have to come from a dynasty. And then, of course, the order in which members of the royal family rule is called succession. But we know that in the ancient world, there were many intrigues because pharaohs had many wives. Some of them had more than one wife, and there'll be all types of intrigue. One wife trying to get her son to become pharaoh. So when Menes united Egypt, right, there were two crowns. This is the white crown of Upper Egypt, and this is the lower crown of Lower Egypt. And when he became pharaoh, he had, you see what he did? He put the two crowns. So this signified that he unified both regions. So remember this name, Menes. Again, is he real or a fiction? Let's see. You see, so this again, ancient.edu, Menes. And this is not fiction. So if you want to get more Menes, the information is there. So this is not fiction. All right, so any questions so far? So for those of you who just joined the class, we are studying ancient Egypt today, a timeline of ancient Egypt. This is your timeline. Location, the rivers, some geography and rivers, agriculture, this is social structure or social class. We talk about Egyptian writing called hieroglyphics, different from what is practiced in Mesopotamia. And this is some symbols of the writing and pictures. And they practice their religion, many gods. They practice mummification, embalmment. They knew about, this is more, embalmment means more, these are people here called morticians. Because when we die, before we are buried, modern day morticians embalm our body and to keep it for about 2 or 3 days. So this is where we are. Remember we met this Pharaoh, Khufu. They built this great pyramid for him. So that tells us that the ancient Egyptians knew about engineering. Now this is the top of a pyramid, but think how many miles down below you have to go to get to, there are many chambers below this. Think today of a modern day skyscraper. All right, I'll show you something. Let's go, I'll show you what I mean by that. If you look at the World Trade Center in New York, the new one after 9/11. Right, this is the new World Trade Center. This is it here. Right? Now, this runs miles down. You might have about 30, 40 floors below here. Sorry. All right. You can have to, right? So the same thing with a pyramid. Right? The pyramids will have a base, but you can be miles down in the earth. So to do that, you have to know what engineering and mathematics. Again, this is what it looks like. So you had a series of tunnels and chambers. Then we get to the middle and the New Kingdom. Again, you see, this is the Nile, this is Kush, this is the Red Sea. This region here, this is the Middle East. This is the Mediterranean world. This is Europe. So in the New Kingdom, here we're meeting for the first time a female pharaoh called Hatshepsut, Queen Hatshepsut. All right, sorry. Queen Hatshepsut. She became ruler when her husband died. And under her rule, she expanded what is red line, trade routes to all over. She traded as far as Greece, this region here. She went to Asia Minor, India. And this is Arabia, right? She's trading in the Mediterranean world. If you want to know, is she real? Was this real or was this a story? Again, you can go to ancient EU, and this is her here, Queen of Hatshepsut. She was the first female ruler of ancient Egypt. But this is a pictorial rendering of her here. Notice she's not white, right? She's a black woman, because she was a black woman. So Hatshepsut. So if you want to know more what Hatshepsut, note that, you see, these are Egyptian soldiers. Notice their color. This is a temple. He created this temple in memory of her. And again, from the top, this is the aerial view of the temple. So you have a lot, if you want to know more about Hatshepsut, you can go and read. Like every other society, there's art and drawings. So these are what the artists did around temples and other buildings in ancient Egypt. Pyramids. On the columns, they created art depicting everyday life in ancient Egypt. And they made earrings and different things, amulets, precious stones. So to do this, these people were not uncivilized. To build these things, they were not uncivilized. Again, we're going to meet another queen, another pharaoh, a woman again, Nefertiti. Nefertiti. She becomes, so this is Nefertiti. Is she real? How real is Nefertiti? Did she exist? Again, if you want to know if she existed, Nefertiti. Again, you go back to ancient EU, and this is Nefertiti. She was the wife of Pharaoh Akhenaten. And when her husband died, she took over. And they had 6 daughters. These are the names of their daughters. Some long ancient Egyptian names. And for some reason, nobody knows, she disappeared. She fell out of favor with her husband because she could not produce males. And she was replaced by Kia. So in ancient world, if men wanted boys to take over the power, she was abandoned. She abandoned the religion and she was banished. And some said she committed suicide. So again, you have much to know about. So when you're writing about the pharaohs, when you're defining pharaohs, and you only tell me that the male pharaohs, then you're falling short of your points. You have to mention some of the female pharaohs. Another pharaoh was called King Tutankhamen. We call him King Tut for short, a famous pharaoh. And this is the tomb. His tomb was discovered in 1922. Tutankhamen. Another great pharaoh was Ramesses the Great. Ramesses. So just a summary, Egyptian civilization developed along the River Nile, agriculture because of the soil. Egyptian kings were considered gods. And this is Egyptian writing. So again, we come back to geography. The Nile River, because of the soil, it created two types of soil, black land and red land. So we talk about religion. They practiced polytheism, they were polytheistic. In terms of their religion, they developed codes of ethics to govern behavior. They created the Book of the Dead. They practiced mummification. And Akhenaten, he tried to create polytheism because he believed he was the only God, but that didn't last too long. What were some of the achievements? Ancient Egyptians built pyramids. And one of the pyramid of Giza. They developed hieroglyphics. And when Napoleon Bonaparte, who tried to conquer the world, went down into Egypt, one of his soldiers found the Rosetta Stone. And the Rosetta Stone made it possible for historians to read Egyptian hieroglyphics because it was written also in Greek and hieroglyph. So the Egyptians were very educated people. If this Rosetta Stone was not found, we would not have known many things today, we know today of ancient Egypt. They practiced astronomy and they developed the world's first 365-day calendar. They knew mathematics and geometry. Anybody in class here have done geometry?
Yes, sir.
Right. So you do geometry if in engineering, and you also do trigonometry. And they also practiced medicine. They did surgery, and they were very good at using herbs to heal. This is their political structure. Politics. What was the political structure of ancient Egypt? Again, if we want to know more of the political structure of ancient Egypt, you can do more research. The political structure of ancient Egypt. And if you come here, they'll give you some ideas of the political structure. You'll tell you who are the government officials. The vizier, he was the most important person after the pharaoh. Then you had the chief treasurer. Then you had the overseers. Then you had scribes. They wrote the official documents. And these are right. And each part had their own government. So these are some facts about ancient Egypt. The pharaoh was the ultimate authority. The vizier was the most powerful government official. Viziers were second only to the pharaoh in power. Egypt was divided into nomes, and a nomad governed each one. People paid taxes with agriculture produce of precious metals. The government stored food and distributed it to workers or to the people in times of famine. the government ran building projects like the pyramids. So you can read up on this. You can come to the site, or there are several if you want to go to. All right, there are several of them. Okay, if you go to the History Museum, you'll see, look at here. This is the political structure, social, there are the pharaohs, royal women, royal symbols, bureaucracy, the military. So there's a host of things you can do research on. Every society or every country, there's an economy. How do we sustain living? How do we create wealth, save money, work for wages? There's an economy. And the economy was based on farming, mining, and trade. This is how we are making our money. We are paying our bills, feeding ourselves, clothing ourselves, implementing government projects, having money to build pyramids because we are engaged in farming, mining, and trade. Again, we come back to social structure. It was hierarchical. Pharaoh, vizier, nobles and priests, scribes, government workers and soldiers, merchants and crafts, farmers, servants and slaves. And this is gender relations, right? And then you have the middle class. And this is how it looked like. So any questions so far on ancient Egypt? Anyone want clarification on anything we spoke about this evening?
Quick question. So
Yeah.
in regards to the New Kingdom, that's when we just talk about Queen Nefertiti, King Tut, Ramses the Great, Ramses the Great, Queen Hatshepsut.
So you're talking about the New Kingdom, right?
Yeah, those are all the rulers in regards to the New Kingdom.
All right. So we can, if you want to know more about it, let's go here. The New Kingdom of Egypt, right? So here we have it here on the ancient EDU, the New Kingdom. Ramesses, you see him here? Hatshepsut. This is another ruler. Thutmose, Amenhotep, Akhenaten, Nefertiti, Tutankhamen, Ramesses II. These were in the New Kingdom. These are the pharaohs in the New Kingdom, right?
Got you.
And then this is the Middle Kingdom. And then this group here, the Hyksos, they will invade Egypt. These are sort of whitish people. They will invade, like Cleopatra was a member of the Hyksos. They invaded Egypt and then they took power. And then you have, right? So this is, I'll show you something. When we talk about Egypt, and people think only Egyptians are fair-skinned people, that is not true. Because if you go to this place called Nubia, right? The Nubian kingdom, right? The Nubian kingdom. This is Nubia. Nubia was also part of Egypt, but this part of Egypt was controlled by Black people. And today that is part of the Sudan. And how would he know that? And let's look at this and we'll see if we research black pharaohs. Black pharaohs. Who were some of these black pharaohs? Right? We mentioned, history has corrupted a lot of stuff. Again, black pharaohs. Who are these people? So if you read this passage here, you'll see, for instance, one of the black pharaohs is called Shabaka. And if this is a newspaper article here, they've forgotten black pharaohs. They once ruled all of Egypt, but Africa's Kush pharaohs have been overlooked. Right? This is a black pharaoh, but in the history books they don't talk about them. And this is an archaeologist who she is researching that. And this is where in Meru and in Kush. This is part of the Sudan. The pyramids here are much smaller, but there were more pyramids in Lower Egypt than in Upper Egypt. The only difference is that the pyramids were much bigger in Lower Egypt. So again, you see, these are some of the names. Shabaka. This is Shabaka. This is Pai. Tarika. These are black pharaohs. So at one time, Nubia conquered the whole of Egypt. And then Upper Egypt conquered Lower. They were always in war. Upper Egypt trying to conquer Lower Egypt, and Lower Egypt trying to conquer Upper Egypt until Egypt was conquered by the Assyrians, Romans, and the Greeks, and then the Romans, the Hyksos invaded, and then the Romans took power. I'm trying to find a PowerPoint here for you all to show. Trying to remember what I saved it under. I'll find it and I'll share it with you all to compare and contrast. So, since we are talking about if we are talking about the characteristics of a civilization, right? All right, so here we have some characteristics of civilization. Government. So if we want to talk about ancient Egypt, there's a government. There were laws. What was the ancient Egyptian law called? Anybody knows? Let's go to the evidence. It was called this. Mahat or Mahat, pronounced Mehet. Mehet. It was based on justice, harmony, and balance. That was Egyptian law. Right? So Egypt had laws. There were seven principles, or seven, what we call seven principles. justice, harmony, balance, order, reciprocity, and propriety. So just like ancient Mesopotamia, there were lords. We saw social classes. So I want you to use this as a guide to organize your own notes. So when you are preparing for your midterm exam and your final exam, whatever terms come in, I give you, you can be able to organize those terms in a logical way. So, seeing that we have done ancient Egypt, let's see if we can do some compare. Let's compare so let's compare if I ask you to compare ancient Mesopotamia and ancient so let's take the first one and it's open to everybody. Let's take location. Who want to begin? Location. Tell me location for both. Anyone?
They both live around rivers. Right.
Well, no, give me specific. Tell me the location of where was Mesopotamia?
It's in the Middle East.
Right. Middle East. Great. Where's ancient Egypt? What's the location of ancient Egypt? Jaden, what is the location of ancient Egypt?
I didn't know you was talking to me. Africa, North Africa.
All right, North, good. North Africa. So then we come in to talk about rivers. Mesopotamia, what are the two rivers? Anyone?
Is it Tigris and Euphrates?
Tigris and Euphrates, all right. Ancient Egypt, what is the river?
The Nile.
The Nile, all right. And you could put here white and blue. All right, so we establish location. So when we look at the 13 characteristics, another characteristic we can look at is government. How were they similar and different? What were the rulers in Mesopotamia called? What were they called? Called what? Kings. And name me a king in Mesopotamia. Anyone? Name me a king.
Sargon.
Sargon. Any other name? Another one is Hammurabi. Right, and you have King Nebuchadnezzar. What were the rulers in ancient Egypt called? Pharaohs, right? Name me a pharaoh. And he's, so these are the things you should be, all right, so here we go again. We talk about writing. What was the writing in ancient Mesopotamia called?
Cuneiform.
Cuneiform. All right, and what was it called in ancient Egypt?
Hieroglyphics.
Right, hieroglyphics. All right. And what both had in common? They use what? Scribes. So scribes are found in both civilizations engaged in writing. Gender. Somebody tell me about gender relations in both civilizations. Can anyone tell me about gender relations?
The women they didn't have as many rights as they did today.
So in ancient Mesopotamia, women had few rights. What about ancient Egypt? We saw women were what? Pharaohs, right? In Mesopotamia, they were not pharaohs. So some women in ancient Egypt had more rights than women in ancient Mesopotamia. What about religion? What is compare religion for me? Right, we can say that both societies practice what? Polytheism, right? But what was the difference?
Egypt got theirs in Mesopotamia.
Right, in ancient Egypt, they believed in what? They believe in the after what?
Afterlife.
The afterlife. If we take laws, if you take laws, what was the law in ancient Mesopotamia?
An eye for an eye. Hammurabi's code.
Right, the code of Hammurabi, good. And what was the law in ancient Egypt?
Whatever the Pharaoh said.
No, I just showed you it. It was called, it was based on what? In terms of worship centers, what were the worship centers in ancient Mesopotamia called? What were they called?
Ziggurats.
Ziggurats. Right? And what were they called in ancient Egypt? Temples, right? And we had, of course, we had to build pyramids. So this is an exercise. Again, I'm just trying to engage you in terms of the exercise and trying to understand. For instance, if this class was an in class, if there was no COVID, this would have been your final exam and your midterm, or ask you something like this. Using, and this is what I did last semester, using location / geography, government, laws, gender, relations, writing and literature, religion, and contribution to global history. Compare ancient Mesopotamia with ancient. That would have been your assignment. And I would have asked you to provide documentation. Where did you get this information from? You have to document information. So, right, so this is in the syllabus. I'll show you what is compare means. So you don't have to do this for me, but what I want you to do, for you to do, use the characteristics of, use the characteristics of a civilization. So we have studied ancient Mesopotamia, and you document your notes. So you, in addition to what we have on Blackboard and PowerPoint, to what is in the book, to what is on the internet, you can make your own notes around these things. So this is for your own research and development. And so when you can do that, then you can be able to practice to compare civilizations. Right? So this is an important, this should be your exercise. It's not a homework exercise, but you all have your group me, and you can organize in your group me's and do this exercise. You know, so everyone would know it. And as I said, if this was in class, this would be your exercise. And I would have asked for what? 5 to 8 pages, 6 to 8 pages. But since we are not in class, this is what we're going to do. This is the textbook here. And so at the end of chapter 2, so at the end of chapter 2, you have terms, these are the terms in chapter 2. The terms polytheism, cuneiform, That's another term. Epic poem. Another term. Hammurabi's law code. Pharaoh. So these are some of the terms in chapter 2. So if you have to, for your midterm exam, I could, depending on where we reach, I could choose a couple of terms from each chapter, and I ask you to write me a well-developed paragraph on polytheism. So if we're talking about polytheism, right? Again, writing is this: who, what, where, when, why. So I want to, in your couple of lines, you go that what is polytheism? So you're not answering who. So what is polytheism? What is polytheism? You will define it and say what? It is the worship and belief of many gods and goddesses, right? And you can go further. You can say in ancient Mesopotamia, these were the gods and goddesses. In ancient Egypt, these were the gods and goddesses. Now, who performed the worship? This is where who comes in now. The who will be who? The priests and the priestesses. Right? That's the who. What was their role? You have to tell me what was their role, what role they played in that worship. Where? The where is where did they worship? They worship where? If you talk about Mesopotamia in ziggurats, right? Temples, they use shrines, etc. When did they worship? When? What was the occasions? What were the occasions? You have to tell me that. When they worship. Why? Why did they worship? Why? Because they wanted to prevent what? Floodings. Women wanted children, boys, male. And you have to tell me how. How did they worship? How? So you see, you have to describe. So you can't just write me 2 lines. 2 lines is not, 2 lines will not cut it. You have to give me a well-planned. So when I read your paragraph, I'm looking for this: who, what, where, when, why, and how. Right? Under each definition, this is what Dr. Vincent is looking for. So let's say I gave you for the midterm, let me see, hopefully, let's see, for the midterm, I'm trying to get a chapter 5. That's my goal. Let's see, chapter 5 is, let's see where we can get before the midterm. Yeah, chapter 5 is Greece. I want to get to Greece, ancient Greece. So let's say 3 multiplied by 5, and I give you 15 terms for the midterm, right? That could be an exam, or could be, let's say 15 terms. Once we get to chapter 5. If we don't get to chapter 5, I can give you, let's say we reach chapter 4, it will be 12, right? 12. So 12, if it's, let's say it is 12 terms, 12 multiplied by 8. 8 points, that'll give you 96. And then I'll add 4 to that to make up the 100. 96 plus 4 will make up 96 plus 4 will equal to 100, right? So if it's 15 points, if it's 15 terms, it'll be 15 by 90. But you'll see where we'll get there. So you cannot write 3 lines for 8 points. If it is 12 terms, or how many terms it is, I want to see a well-developed paragraph. And then, when you have completed that, your definitions, under each definition, you will document. So let's say you're documenting pyramids, you'll do this. Polytheism, www. If you get it from ancient EU.com/whatever so I want to see documentation. After each term, you'll document, and then you'll skip a line and go to the, you will space and go to the another term. Are we clear? So this is your midterm. Remember your midterm, and this will also be a final. Your final is your midterm exam is based on terms from the textbook, and the final exam will also be based on terms from the textbook. Wherever we have arrived. So I say my goal. So for the midterm, my goal for the midterm is to get to chapter 5, which is ancient Greece. Because as of Thursday, from Thursday, so I would like you to go and read. We're going into chapter 3, which is ancient India. So this is where I want to begin on Thursday. I will put up the PowerPoint for you by Wednesday night, and you'll have it. Any questions?
No.
Will we have any assignments like before the midterm?
No, there's no assignments. All we'll be talking about. I mean, I'll go through things like, before the midterm, we'll come back to this, right? So you'll have more clarification on what you have to do and what am I looking for when you write. Because remember when you write your definitions, when I read your sentences, your whole definition, I'm looking for who, what, where, when, why, and how. So what was polytheism? What is polytheism? What it is? Who is the one who practiced it? Who were the principal actors? Priests and priestesses. What were their role? You can't just tell me what priests and priestesses perform functions. Tell me some of the functions. Where was it practiced? In Zugarats. And you can give me some names when was it practiced? When? At what time of the year? Why was it practiced? And how was it practiced? So this is what I'm looking for. So when I read your paragraph and it is well written, then you can get your full 8 marks. It is well documented. I'm satisfied. You will get 8 out of 8 for that one. If it falls short, you can come up with 4 out of 8, 5 out of 8, 6 out of 8, 7 out of 8, or 0 out of 8. Because if there's no documentation, I will deduct points because I will consider that to be plagiarism. I point you to the websites where to go, and we'll keep talking about that. Okay? All right, so enough of that. Let me take roll and you'll roll out of here.